newsletter from bulletjournal.com, this month on the blog is travel month. So I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about how I travel and how I travel journal. First, I'll talk about how I pack for long haul flights. Then I'll show you some collections that I use in my travel journal. And finally, I'll do a flip through of 3 of my travel journals. Basically, I'm American, but I live in Australia and I've also lived in France and the UK. So long distance travel is a fact of life for me. And I've learned some tips for making those long flights more bearable. Tip number 1, obviously you want to pack as light as possible. Number 2, dress comfortably, but nice enough that if you got upgraded to business class, you wouldn't feel out of place there. Number 3, I recommend having a few different sized bags for different trips that you're going on. So for example, if I'm going on a big trip with lots of clothes, lots of shoes, or I'm taking gifts to people, I'll take my big bag. Then I have a smaller carry-on size bag for trips where I don't need to pack as much, maybe a bathing suit and a towel, who knows. Then I have an actual carry-on bag that I use, which is my soft shoulder bag. Kath Kidston, that one is. Or you could do a backpack as your carry-on. My 4th tip for long-haul flights is smart carry-on. So I never take a suitcase on the plane, and I never put anything in the overhead compartment. And the reason for that is I'm packing 2 types of things in this bag. 1, things that will make me more comfortable on the flight, and 2, things that will entertain me on the flight. So I know that I want to have easy access to this. I put this bag under the seat in front of me, and I'm able to get in and out of it easily. The other thing about my carry-on is that I pack a separate toiletries bag for the plane, and this is a much smaller toiletries bag than the one that I take on my travel, which is going into the checked baggage. And that has things in there that will make me more comfortable. Okay, so as far as what I take onto the plane, as I mentioned, I take a separate toiletries bag for carrying onto the plane. This one came from Emirates. Some airlines will give them to you, but not all of them will, so you kind of can't count on it. Inside this bag, I will pop things to make me more comfortable. So for starters, airplanes can get really dry, sort of recycled air. So I take a little chapstick and a really tiny hand lotion that can come in handy. If you wear contact lenses, your eyes will get dry at some point, so I'd pack your glasses as backup. I normally wear glasses onto the plane, but I'll pack contact lenses in case I break my glasses or something like that. Also take my glasses case so that that's less likely to happen. I take 1 of each of my pills on the plane just so that I don't interrupt my sort of usual schedule, and you can pop those in if you've got a little pill container like this, or maybe just a plastic bag, Ziploc bag, that sort of thing. I also will take moist towelettes on the plane and a rubbish bag, and then tiny toothpastes and a toothbrush and some earplugs. I wouldn't recommend going out and buying any of these items necessarily. For these, you can steal them from KFC. Take any sort of bag as a rubbish bag. And then earplugs, if you pick them up in various places, or say from a hotel that you're visiting, you could get a toothbrush. They do come in really handy. The toothpaste helps you freshen up once you've landed. Also, take some gum that will help with your ears popping, but will help you freshen up as well after the flight. Earplugs come in really handy when you're trying to sleep on that airplane and there's a screaming child a few rows back from you. The other thing that I would recommend for helping you sleep is an eye mask. You don't necessarily need this, but it can really help to block out that ambient light from the plane. So I pop that in there. And finally, they're super daggy, but they have changed my life. I take a neck pillow with me. My husband refuses to use one of these, but oh man, they make it so much easier to get comfortable on the airplane, which is really difficult to do anyway. I like this one because it has a nice soft texture against my skin, and it converts to an iPad holder. I won't show you that, but there are lots of super fancy neck pillows you can get these days. Have a look, do some research, see what you think will work for you. The other thing that I take is my trusty sort of headphone jack converter. So headphones go in there, and then that converts to the airplane 2-pronged method. And then you can also take a USB cable on the flight. Most planes now have a spot to plug that in on your screen, on the seat back screen, so you can charge your devices if you need to. So that's my little plain toiletries bag. Now in my shoulder bag or backpack, I'll take some magazines for the point in the flight when I just can't concentrate on anything else. Take 1 book so that I can travel light. Take my headphones, take my knitting. Yes, you can take knitting needles on airplanes. I've done it all over the world. And then I'll take my travel wallet, and often I'll preload that with, you know, money or whatever I need. And I also put my travel journal right inside of that. It has a pen loop as well, so I can be very compact. Other things would be any other sort of glue tape, any pens or other journaling supplies that you know you're gonna wanna use on the plane. Now, take your iPod or your iPhone or your smartphone, whatever it is. I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking an iPad or a laptop on your journey unless you know that you're gonna use it while you're traveling. Some of the supplies that I bring along for travel journaling, as I mentioned, I bring my travel wallet and I use that to store my journal right inside. These are Moleskine Volant journals. They come in a 2-pack for a really good price, and they just happen to conveniently fit inside. Obviously, you can use a bag, or you don't even need a bag necessarily. Not everyone's journals are going to fit inside their travel wallet, and not everyone has a travel wallet. Travel wallet's not really necessary, but I had my eye on one for a while, and then this one went on sale and I just decided to go for it. I really love it. I store my phone in this pocket in the back. It has the wrist strap, which is really handy for carrying. It has a pen loop, a little spot for my passport and my credit cards and ID cards, and then a few flaps for different tickets and boarding passes and various things, and then obviously a little money pocket for currency. I also bring along glue tape pretty much everywhere I go, even when I'm not traveling. I really love this Bostik brand. I've tried other brands and had issues with them. I just keep going back to Bostik. They're great. And then occasionally, not every time I travel, but sometimes I'll bring along my, let's turn that around, my Fujifilm Instax Share SP1. I think this is like a first generation one. I really love it. It's really cute. I might actually switch to a different system because the film for these is really expensive, and there are cheaper, more environmentally friendly systems now. But it's quite fun to be able to print photos while you're traveling and stick them in your journal or give them to your friends that you visited. Now I'll discuss some of the collections that I use in my travel journals. The first thing I do is to make a cover page for that journal, for that trip. I know that all of you out there are way more creative than I am, way more artistic, so you can really have a lot of fun with this one. The main things that I want to know though are where we are traveling to, and what the dates are. This is really great for just inspiring you for the trip, especially if you're quite artistic. It can really get you excited about the trip. After my cover page, I'll put in a map of where we're starting from and where we're going. I printed this off of Google Images and then added some color, but you could also hand draw this if you're good at drawing. After that, I'll add in a packing list at some point. Now, you might want to put your packing list later on after you've done some other collections, but I tend to start it quite early, just so that when I remember something that I definitely want to pack, and I remember that 6 weeks before the trip, I'll go ahead and write it down and then know that I won't forget it in the hustle and bustle in the run up to the trip. The next thing that I'll do is a to-do list before travel. So I'll do my pre-travel to-do list, and I've decided I think it would be a great idea to separate this into sections. In the past I've just done one list, but I thought it would be really great to sort of do your longer term and then your shorter term to-dos. So 6 weeks in advance, 1 week in advance, 48 hours before travel, and then in that last day, 12 hours before travel. Okay, so after my sort of planning what I'm gonna do before travel, I'm gonna jump into the most important spread, as far as I'm concerned, in the entire travel journal, and that's my itinerary. So this is my go-to page while I'm traveling. I know exactly what cities I'm gonna be in at what time, and what time the trains and the flights and the XYZ are. So there's a couple different itinerary layouts that I've used over the years that can help with this. The first one is relatively simple, just like a calendar, monthly calendar type thing, and you can shorten this. If it's just a week-long trip, you can just focus on maybe the week before it, the week and the week after, that sort of thing. Then I know where I'm gonna be, I've got my flights, I know I'm in London for a few days, then Glasgow, that sort of thing. So it's quite a simple layout. Now, some trips that you take, with the itinerary that I use, I'm gonna tailor that to whatever the trip I'm going on, whatever it requires. So there have been trips that I've taken where our travel was way more complicated. So we were going to, I think on this is modeled off of a trip that we did where it was 2.5 weeks, and we went to Exeter, Oxford for a day, London for a day. Then we went to Glasgow, Islay, back to Glasgow, Aberdeen, back to Glasgow for some reason. Then I went to Birmingham, then I went to Cheltenham to visit some friends, and then back to London in order to catch the flights home. And so it was kind of a crazy trip. So I decided to do a layout where I knew on every day of the trip what city I was gonna be in, what activities I needed to do, and that can include like the flight and train times, or just generally where I'm going, who I'm seeing, also items that I don't want to forget back home, like pay rent. And then I had a section here as well for accommodation to write in where we were staying. So if we were staying at someone's house, write that in, and then maybe also include their sort of phone numbers and their address so that I knew exactly how to contact them or how to get to where I was going. And often when you go through immigration, they will ask you for the address of the place that you're staying. So here's another where we stayed in a hotel, and I made up an address there. So that sort of thing, I really liked that layout for knowing where my accommodation was and where I needed to be at what times. And it was a very simple, I just flipped through to the right page. It's all there. Again, for a complicated travel itinerary, you can also do day to a page. And so this can go into a lot more detail than that line by line one I just showed. So for example, I would do, and you could also split this into 2 days to a page, whatever works for you. I did literally hour by hour down the page, and then at the bottom of the page where there was some extra room, I put where we were staying, accommodation, that sort of thing. So on this one, we were en route to Changi Airport, and then we landed in Edinburgh, and we went for dinner and then some sleep, and here's where I taped in the address of our accommodation. And then, so the next day, when I was actually traveling, this allows you after the fact to log what you were doing as well. So in this case, we didn't know what we were gonna do that day, so I didn't have anything written in there, but I wrote this all in after the fact. And so I wrote where we went, what we did, and we had Thai for dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, and then, oh my goodness, we got engaged. That was a good trip. The next collection I use, and I do this for pretty much every trip that we go on, even if I'm going back to a city that I've already been to before. I do a city planner trip. This is great for any research that you're doing before you go, any brainstorming of places that you want to eat, foods that you want to eat, restaurants you want to check out, attractions, museums, activities. I always look up yarn stores everywhere I'm going, so I know which shops or stationery shops, that sort of thing, so I know exactly what shops I want to go to and what sort of section of town they're in. And you can be quite creative with this. Mine, I'm not super artistic, so mine are pretty simple, but go crazy, go creative. In this trip, I did 2-page spreads for each city that we went to, but you can also do a 1-page spread, or on another trip, I actually did like half pages for each city because I kind of knew we weren't going to have as much time. There weren't as many activities that I wanted to do. I like to log sort of important numbers that I'm going to need. Pull these out of the way. So, for example, my frequent flyer number and my husband's frequent flyer number, or car rental booking confirmations, or even your flight confirmation. If we have travel insurance, what are the policy numbers, that sort of thing. Then I might write down any phone numbers for people that I'm visiting in other countries where I don't necessarily have their phone number logged in my phone, but I know that I might need to contact them to pick me up at the airport or whatever, so I might write in phone numbers. And the other thing is I want to write down to remind myself to send people postcards, because I always forget to send people postcards while I'm traveling. So I write down the names of people that I know I want to send postcards to, and then I might also write in their address. Obviously I can store that on my phone as well, most of their addresses are on my phone, but it's just an easy go-to place where I can say, oh, I'm on a train, I'm in the middle of writing a postcard and I've got my journal, there are the addresses. Easy done. Basically what I do once I've done all of those planning pages, but before I've actually headed off on the trip, I will start to load up, I'll sort of preload my journal with some items that are gonna help in the journaling process while I'm traveling. So I will put lots of envelopes in my journal. I'll just paste them in on random pages. Basically, I'll do two things. Number one, I'll load those with stickers or little cards that I know that I want to use while I'm traveling, post-it notes, that sort of thing. Then you can preload it directly into your journal. That way it's self-contained. When you're on the trip, there they are. There are those stickers that you knew you wanted to use. The other thing that envelopes are great for is for collecting items while you're on the trip. You can use those envelopes as temporary storage, and then you can paste those items in at a later date. The Moleskine website actually has some really great printables and some little envelopes that you can print out and tape together and put in your journal. The Kiki K Paper Lovers book always has really cute little envelopes that are sort of too small to actually send in the mail. So they're perfect for a travel journal because you can put little items in them. All right, now let's talk about journaling while you're actually on the road. You've arrived at your destination, now what? So especially if you're visiting people or traveling with people, you are gonna be really busy. And I find that sometimes I forget to actually journal while I'm traveling. But remember to use opportunities like train journeys, journal on the flight, use evenings and mornings in your hotel room or your youth hostel. If you don't have a lot of privacy or space to stop and think, you can always go to cafes. It also gives you an opportunity to sit down and actually write in your journal what's been going on. While I'm traveling, I pick up literally every bit of flat paper, anything like that, anything even remotely flat that I can stick in my journal. Food wrappers. One time I stuck a plastic ice cream spoon in my travel journal. You can also print photos as you go, as I mentioned, if you've got your little printer with you. I look for little envelopes. So for example, hotel key card sleeves are great little envelopes for storing items and pasting into your journal. Train schedules, I think I've got a fold out here. Yep, here's a train schedule. Anything small, anything flat, it's going in. The last piece of advice that I would say is to just be childlike while you're traveling. Stop and look at things that you would normally just walk right past, and even draw them in your journal, even if you think you're a terrible artist, or you can photograph them to draw them later. When you're at museums, look for activities for kids. So you'll often have, museums will often have stamps that kids can put in their journal or their, passport, whatever, different things. So use those, act like a kid, pretend you're a kid. When we were at Singapore airport one time, I saw there was a setup with paper on it and crayons, and so I was immediately attracted, and I went over it, and it turned out it was like a brass rubbing activity. My husband was absolutely mortified that I did this, but I stopped and did that brass rubbing with those crayons, and I pasted it into my travel journal, and I love it. So now I'm just gonna wrap this up with a flip through of my journals.